and thank you for joining us this evening. It's a little dreary from where I am. I'm hoping it's a little better for you, but if not, what a better thing to do on a dreary evening than sit and learn a little bit and discuss with some of your peers. So thanks for joining us. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Liz Zulowski. I'm the President and CEO of Leadership Niagara, and it's my pleasure to welcome you tonight. Leadership Niagara and the Levesque Institute for Civic Engagement have partnered on this series, and Niagara University's Levesque Institute for Civic Engagement launched their presidential series to inform you, the voter, with expertise and experience on critical issues to this year's presidential election. As part of that series, we partnered, the Leadership Niagara partnered with the Levesque Institute to bring you the three-part series, Leaders Sharing Vision, Value, and Views. And so tonight is part two of that three-part series, and it will focus on military and worldview. The intent of this series is to keep political views out of the sessions and bring facts that we hope will help you to become informed through various lenses of leadership. In these divisive and turbulent times for us, strong leadership is critical more now than ever before. And so we're hoping that tonight will help you be enlightened and have some engaging discussion. I'd like to thank Patty Roble, the Executive Director of the Levesque Institute. Patty, can you give everyone a wave? I know they all know who you are, but Dr. Paul Vermette.
And thank you to Ryan and John for being on the panel tonight.
Yes. Dr. Paul Vermette, can you give a wave? I think he's having a hard time hearing. He is the individual labeled PJV in your windows. And Brittany DiPietro, the program manager at the Levesque Institute, for all of their deliberate and painstaking planning and thought that went into bringing this series to you. So thank you to all of them. I'd like to also thank our distinguished panelists tonight. They represent a cross-sector section of military experience. Our third panelist, Vanita Jackson-Smith, did have a conflict this evening, and she is going to try and join us, but I believe we're only going to have the two panelists who it is my pleasure to introduce, John Cooper and Lieutenant Colonel Ryan Smith. I'll tell you just a little bit about these wonderful people. So John Cooper is the chairman of the Niagara Military Affairs Council. You may have heard it called NIMAC. He's a recently retired CEO of Cooper Sign Company. He started at Cooper Sign in the production department and later became president of the family business, having served in that position for over 20 years. During his career, Cooper's been involved in various community and business organizations, including the founder and past president of the Niagara Business and Professional Association, the vice chairman of the Niagara Industrial Development Agency, sponsorship chairman of the Thunder Over Niagara Air Show, and board member of the Northeast Council of Air Shows. Mr. Cooper is the NIMAC chairman. He holds the distinction of being Leadership Niagara's 2005 Leader of the Year. And I'm happy to share with you that NIMAC, the Military Affairs Council, has been selected as Leadership Niagara's 2020 Organization of the Year. So congratulations to them.
Thank you.
And through your leadership, John, thank you. And next we have Lieutenant Colonel Ryan Smith. He is the commander of the 328th Air Refueling Squadron. He is a member of the Best Class Ever, Leadership Niagara 2019. Yay, go Best Class Ever. Lieutenant Colonel Smith entered the Air Force in 2002 through the United States Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Prior to his current position, he served as the Director of Operations, 54th Air Refueling Squadron at Altus Air Force Base in Oklahoma. As the Director of Operations, he was responsible for 8,549 flying hour program, the accomplishment of 10 different student syllabi, the supervision of training over 970 students, and training currencies for over 100 permanent party officers and enlisted air crew members. Among his many other accomplishments, and the list is very long, I had to cull this down quite a bit to share with you this evening. He previously served as the executive officer to the Director of Regional Affairs, the Office of the Deputy under the Secretary of the Air Force, International Affairs at Headquarters in USA Air Force Base in Washington, D.C. While in Washington, D.C., Lieutenant Colonel Smith also served as the Kuwait and Oman Country Director and was an Air Force Fellow in the office under the Secretary of Defense and the Department of Energy. He's also served as the Standardization and Evaluation Site Chief, Operations Group Executive Officer, Flight Commander of the current operations and Student Training Management, Squadron Executive Officer, Unit Deployment Deployment Manager, and has been deployed 8 times in support of operations Enduring Freedom, Iraqi Freedom, and Operation Inherent Resolve. So we welcome him tonight and we thank him for his leadership. As we move on into getting into our discussion, the format that we will follow tonight is the same as last week if you were with us. We will ask each of the panelists questions. Each will both have the opportunity to answer the question. They will have about 2 minutes to answer it, and there will be discussion at the end. If you have any questions, we ask you to please provide them in the text box below, and we will share those out in the chat box rather. So let's begin. We're going to start with you, John, to answer the first question, and I'm going to ask you, each of you are bound by the Hatch Act. And John, I'm going to ask you to first give us a definition of what the Hatch Act is, and then if both of you can share your thoughts on its protections and what effect that it has on you and your ability to lead. So John, you have the floor.
Sure. Well, I'll start off by saying I'm not an attorney and I'm not an expert on the Hatch Act by any means, but it does go back to the 1930s and basically restricts partisan politics in government. Where, as you can imagine, years ago, there may have been, if you worked for the post office, your supervisor might say, well, you're going to vote for a particular candidate or you're going to lose your job. And that type of thing, cannot happen today. As far as the partisan part of it, whether it be promoting a partisan candidate, whether it be a political party or whether it be a political group, there are restrictions on what is allowed there. Now, military personnel are governed from the perspective of DoD directive. Obviously, the DoD being a federal government agency, it falls under the Hatch Act. And there's a directive that goes on down to the military, which is pretty much the same thing, using your rank to promote a particular politician, using government property, DoD property, and resources to promote a particular politician, or also in the case of social media, which is obviously a new thing. And so the law has been updated over the years, most recently in 2012 to cover things like social media. Now, as far as NIMAC is concerned, our bylaws require that we follow the Hatch Act in what we do. We are considered trusted agents of the commanders at our base, that we can come in and talk to them and discuss things with them that they might need. They don't want us leaving there and then being involved directly in partisan politics to the point where it restricts what we can do for them, or that they could share things with us that maybe they want to share with us. So the other thing is our bylaws require that an elected official cannot become an officer of our corporation. So for instance, we have elected officials that are on our board, but they could never serve as our president or our chairman, vice chairman, etc. It's a positive as far as NIMAC is concerned, from my perspective, that we stay out of the fray of politics. An example of that is that in 2005 BRAC, Congressman Reynolds, a Republican, very high-ranking in Congress and Republican leadership, was our representative. Yes. I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Just a few more minutes.
Yes. Okay.
A few more time.
I assume that meant that, but I couldn't hear you. So anyway, I'm just about done here. But Senator Reynolds, or Congressman Reynolds, Senator Clinton, obviously very high in leadership in the Democrat Party. Both of them work very closely together, but we could not walk in either of their offices if we became involved politically on any side in that case. So I think it's a secret to our success.
Thank you, John. And Ryan?
Yeah, thanks, John. To simplify with the Hatch Act and myself being an active duty military, actually it doesn't matter if I'm active duty reserve guard, is the big thing is I can't go to political events, campaigns in uniform. So when you ask me how does it affect how I lead, my job is not to lead when it comes to politics, campaigns. That's not the military's job there. But if I take my uniform off and I become a citizen, I'm allowed to go to campaign rallies and all that stuff. It's just with my military hat on and my uniform on, I got to be very careful. So I don't look to lead in that direction. I like to keep politics out of the office, which is nice because a lot of members in the office understand the same thing. The other thing that's unique with the military members is the UCMJ, Uniform Code of Military Justice. Big picture, kind of like a court system within the military. Article 88, as a commissioned officer, I also can't speak poorly about the POTUS, President, Vice President, SecDef. So it kind of ties my hands in a way, but I don't mind because, again, I don't want to get into that. Our job is to take orders from those above, the DOD and the President and the Constitution, and that's how we go forward. It doesn't matter who is in charge of their lawful orders, and that's the job of the military.
Fantastic, thank you. Okay, on to our next question. Ryan, this time we'll start with you. Please share your years of leadership experience and how leadership matters to foreign affairs and the United States image on the world stage.
So my experience, I've been in 18 years, a couple other years through school, but the years I want to focus on is what I know. In 2013 to 2017, I was stationed at the Pentagon, and I went from an operational squadron to headquarters. And that was a big shift. Looking at just maybe your Tops or Wegmans, that's kind of working the cash register, taking the carts operationally. I was very good at that, flying the airplane squadron right to the headquarters, Wegmans and Tops, and learning the big business there. So when I went to the Pentagon, my eyes were wide open. And what I learned, and when you talk about foreign affairs and the United States image, I'll talk about the image that I saw when it comes to the other countries that I worked with. I was the country director for Oman and Kuwait. I worked directly with those countries. And I also worked with Israel when I was in the Secretary of Defense. When it comes at our image to our allies and to these countries, how leadership matters is our image of the military equipment and our tactics, techniques, procedures, and our industry like Lockheed, Boeing are regarded very, very highly. Other countries have money. They need to buy helicopters, fire trucks, all that stuff to protect themselves, all to become better, to be safe. And we have these technologies that we export. And I can get into a little bit more of foreign military sales. It's a very interesting program that the United States has, but that's basically us selling bullets, planes, helicopters, you name it, to other countries. And it helps the U.S. industry, it helps our country, and it helps us become interoperable with other countries. So to kind of recap it, the leadership matters because other countries are looking at us because they know we have great technology, we have good tactics and procedures, and they want to either copy it, learn from us, or work with us. So that's how I look at us in regards to image at the world stage.
Thank you, Ryan. Sorry. And John, please share your
Okay,
thoughts.
could you just repeat the question to remind me?
Sure. So please share your years of leadership experience and equate how leadership matters to foreign affairs and the United States image on the world stage.
Okay, well, leadership has always been a passion of mine from my personal experience, just within the community as a businessman, and of course, over the last 25 years with the Niagara Military Affairs Council. One of the things that it has brought me to is a closer interaction with military. I learned a lot of leadership from being on our board. Our board of directors is 1/3 business people, 1/3 retired military, and 1/3 government. And a lot of what I have observed from a leadership perspective, I've been able to use on my own as I continue to lead the organization. But from a military perspective in foreign affairs, I would say that a strong military can be used to enforce our foreign policy. And an example I would use for that would be when Iraq invaded Kuwait. President Bush at that time, if you'll remember, said that he was going to draw a line in the sand, and that if the nation of Iraq did not retreat over that line, that we were going to come over there and we were going to enforce our foreign policy to free the people of Kuwait. And so I think that would be probably the best example that I can think of as far as how our foreign policy is enforced by a strong military.
Thank you, John. So the next question, John, we're going to begin with you. And can you talk to us about what value having a military installation, what does that bring to our community?
Well, that's a question, I guess, that I'm very passionate about the answer. And I guess I would say, wow, as to all the possibilities that come with that. We see an economic impact from having a military installation, and federal dollars are coveted by any community. But a community like ours that has struggled in Western New York over the last several years financially, federal dollars coming in here supporting small businesses, such as the small business that I retired from when a building is built. For instance, on the base, the contractor on that project looks around to find, where they can get various things, and certainly we always welcome the opportunity to give a price on it, and so on. So there's an economic impact, not just with the 3,000 people employed at our base, the Niagara Falls Air Reserve Station, but there are a tremendous amount of businesses that surround the base and enjoy that $250 million of annual economic impact. The second part of that would be a social impact that I always like to point out, and that is bringing folks like Lieutenant Colonel Smith into our community here. He's moved into our community. I would refer to people like him and others in your class who are military and all the people on our base as being ultimate volunteers. They've volunteered for something that many of us never have. But also when they're in our community, they're involved in the PTA possibly, or the fire hall, or any of the service organizations. So there's an economic impact, there's a social impact.
Thank you. And because we are short one panelist, it does free up a little bit of time. So John, I'm going to ask you a part 2 to that question. And that is, what does the Military Affairs Council bring to the community as well?
Okay, well, 25 years ago, 1995, we were put in a situation as a community where our base, basically the 914 airlift wing at the time, was put up for review by the BRAC Commission. BRAC stands for Base Realignment and Closure, And there's a commission that is set up by legislation enacted by Congress. Basically what happens is the military looks around at their bases and they say, we don't need this place, we don't need that place, etc. Just like General Motors would do the same thing. So basically what happened was the 914th was not on the initial list, but they were added by the BRAC Commission, which is commissioners that are chosen by the President, Congress, etc. And another base, Pittsburgh, was on the list, and they began to defend their base. And so the BRAC Commission decided to put all C-130 bases, at the time 914th flew the C-130, put all of them on a list to be reviewed. And so our base was reviewed at that time. It really woke us up to the jewel that we have, again, referring to an economic and a social impact that happens from the base, put us in a good position as time went on, because in 2005, it was a much more dire situation where the 914th and the 107th were both put up for closure. And that would have closed the entire complex down. Unfortunately, our community came together in a way that I've never seen before, and put us in a position of allowing for the base to be saved. And the BRAC Commission only changed 15% of the Air Force's decisions that year. And so we were in an elite position of being within those 15%. Going through the years to close, basically we work on behalf of the base on various projects and things that you see happen there. Now, some of them, someone could make the case that they're going to happen anyway. Some of them are projects that we help push through by calling attention at various levels of the Air Force, at the Pentagon, and on Capitol Hill, that these things need to happen, such as a fitness center that is going up today. And today we're working on a much larger project that design funds have gone through for, which is the first step in the military to get any kind of military construction, which will eventually be a $54 million enhancement to the runway, which I'm sure Colonel Smith could explain much better, but gives them the use of the entire runway, which will allow them to take off fully loaded, as opposed to now where they cannot take off fully loaded.
Thank you, John, and a nice segue to Lieutenant Colonel Smith. Can you please share your thoughts on what the value of having a military installation in our community, what that brings?
Yeah, John hit the bagels on the economy. One thing that members might not realize about, or people in the area might not realize about this base, it's a reserve and a guard base, meaning that 1 weekend a month, members from all over the U.S. come to this location because this is where they work. And that's where some members have to go out into the community, into hotels, restaurants, all that. So that's the guard and the reserve weekend, but then obviously the permanent party with the schools and the economy. But the one thing I want to touch on, and that's what John led me to, is the runway. There's other programs that the community can piggyback off of. And the runway is an example right now. So the runway is being fixed. We're stressing it for more weight on our side. We've moved the runway and regrooved it and repaved some pieces of it. But the community actually benefits from that one, because the other side of the airport, as most of you know, we share that with the civilian side. So the civilian side with Allegiance and other airframes and local community can now use a better runway that the DoD helped pay for, because we need it for the military, but the local community gets to benefit from things like that.
Thank you. So, Lieutenant Colonel Smith, we will start with you on this question. What is the role of the United States military in keeping a democratic society?
Well, I think we'll start off by saying freedom isn't free. And I look at it, this is my personal opinion here, some pieces of it is, what is the military's role? Well, the military's role is keeping the country free. in protecting the Constitution. And now I'll kind of go into the oath of office because that might help explain some of it. As an officer, I have to say the oath of office that I'm going to support and defend the Constitution against all of the United States, against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I bear true faith and allegiance to the same. What does that mean? That doesn't mean that I swear allegiance to a flag or a certain president. It's to the Constitution. The Constitution and the president and the flag, that's all wrapped and symbolized, into the Constitution. So how I look at that is keeping democratic society. The military helps keep us free, so people have the option and the choices to vote and be led by the people versus being forced to live under a different regime, possibly by another country or another region of the world.
Thank you. And John, I'll ask you the same question.
Well, I do think, what Colonel Smith mentioned concerning the oath that they take to the Constitution of the United States. Obviously, that is the core of our democracy, having a constitution, laws, rules, and so on that we abide by. I think back to 9/11 and what happened when our nation was attacked. And I think back to the 107th, then it was the Air Refueling Wing, and they had the same refueling type of planes that the 914 has today. But I think back to that night of 9/11 when many of us were glued to our television sets, but Merrill Lane, who was the chairman of the NIMAC at the time and somebody who was like a brother to me, also, he was a leader of the year, the same year I was. There were two of us. I should mention that. But he told the story of, he lived at the end of the runway, basically, and not too far from it. But he could hear those refueling planes taking off and starting up as they went to New York City to refuel the fighter aircraft that were protecting what had become known as Ground Zero to all of us and the workers that were there trying to recover who they could from that. And so, something like that, having something like that in our backyard and how it reflects on, we were attacked as a nation on the ground here in our nation, not only in our nation, but in our state. And so obviously that's a very important thing that our borders are protected, that if there is an attack, that we're not only able to continue to protect what we have here, but to go about our business around the world. The second thing I would mention is, many times over the years, the National Guard has been used in a way of helping to keep the peace in various places. The most recently in Wisconsin, we saw where the governor there requested the help of the National Guard. And it's important to know that the National Guard, when they go to a place like that, they can help keep the peace. They do not have the authority to arrest anyone or do anything other than help keep the peace. But obviously people in uniform on a street, when there is bedlam and unrest that is threatening our residents, our citizens, that's very important too. Obviously, you don't want to see that. You don't have to, but they are there, just like they protect us around the world. They're there to protect us there. So.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
John, we'll start with you on this question. From a military perspective, do you feel that our nation is better off globally than we were 4 years ago?
Well, I would say yes, in a lot of ways. Ronald Reagan used the term peace through strength, and many of you might be familiar with the term sequestration, which over the years since 2011 has really restricted our military in various ways, to the point where as budgets were cut, parts for aircraft and so on were limited. We didn't have some of the things that we needed. Over the last 4 years, the spending has increased. I have a son who entered the military, and in 2012, I believe it was, and he is a sniper in the Army. And when he was first in the military, he said, "Dad, they gave me a gun, but they didn't give me any bullets, and we don't have the ammunition to train." Well, if you can imagine him going overseas and not being able to have trained the way that he should have, obviously as a parent, I'm very concerned. What do you mean you can't train? So I think over the last few years, much of that's been fixed. It's not totally fixed. It's still an issue. But I think that the military strengthens our resolve as a nation. It really, again, from a foreign policy standpoint, it can be used, literally used to enforce our foreign policy, but also just, again, going back to what Ronald Reagan said, peace through strength. Teddy Roosevelt used it, speak softly but carry a big stick. I think those are ways that we can really easily understand that.
Thank you. And Ryan, I'll ask you the same question. From a military perspective, do you feel our nation's better off globally than we were 4 years ago?
A little bit complicated here. I'm going to actually say yes and no. The reason with that one is I say yes is because if you look at our technology, our tactics, techniques, and procedures, how we fight, in the last 4 years, obviously we've had new technological breakthroughs, new airplanes that have come online, the F-35, a fighter, and some other, I'm speaking Air Force terms. I don't know what the Navy has an Army, but obviously new technology in 4 years. The reason I say no is we have to be careful is some of our possible adversaries in other countries out there are also modernizing and building at really, really fast rates. So yes, we are getting better, but are we getting better at the correct rate? And the highest military officer, General Brown, recently put out a memo to all of us, and it was labeled Accelerate, Change, or Lose. And the thing we have to watch out for in the military, in my perspective, I'm speaking to the Air Force here, is the last several years, 20 years, Desert Storm 1, Desert Storm 2, we've been in the Middle East. That type of fighting has been the same type of fighting when it comes to Air Force, air superiority. I've had a chance to deploy over there quite a bit. I've never been threatened by an Iraqi airplane or any of those things. We've had air superiority. But as we look for the possible future conflicts, and no one can predict when and where, and if they could, obviously we wouldn't be in the situation, we have to plan for all the different types of scenarios. So I'm not going to name any countries here, but most of us know what possible countries are out there, what other countries have big-time weapons, good techniques. And the question is, if we had to go to war with them, are we ready for that type of war? And that's what General Brown is trying to tell us here, is we can't just rely on the same way we've been fighting here. We have to change the mindset. We have to modernize. There's two pieces to this when you look at the military perspective. You have the technology, and then you have the people as well. The training. Again, you can have the best training or the best equipment, but if you don't know how to use it, it's not going to help you out. So I answered it very military. Again, when you say the nation is better off globally, I'm talking about from my perspective, the military globally against the rest of the world.
Thank you. And Ryan, then we will start with you on this. From a military perspective, again, how do you feel the United States is looked upon? Do you feel the United States is looked upon as the leader of the free world?
Yes, I do. And that goes back to my experience from 2013 to 2017 when I was at the Pentagon and got to see mostly CENTCOM in the Middle East, what those countries, how they looked at us military-wise, how they looked at the technology we had, how they looked at the training we had, and what they wanted to buy and learn from us. If you look at like a country like Saudi Arabia, foreign military sales, okay, so Saudis has money. They're going to buy from China, Russia. They're going to buy something. They're going to buy an airplane. And we've been able to steer them our direction to buy from Lockheed, Boeing, through foreign military sales. And these countries know that when they buy from the United States, they buy good technology. But part of foreign military sales, and something else that we sell, is we don't just sell an airplane and it arrives in that country like an IKEA box and they have to put it together. We sell the airplane, extra engines, extra tires, the maintenance package. Their maintainers come over to this country, their pilots come over to this country. We teach them how to use it, how to fly it. And then we also extend exchange pilots over to those countries so we can help their squadrons, their units become better. And these countries want it because they know it's the complete package. When they order from other countries and they look at the world leaders of other technologies, they might just get a box. They don't have the directions and they don't know how to use it. Again, I give kudos to our industry because of the technology that they can produce. Other countries need it. They want it. And that's why I say that we are the leader of the free world when it comes to that.
And so I'm just going to follow that up with another question. You know, you've spoken a lot today about our technology and what we bring to the stage. Would you say that technology is our greatest asset as a military force, or is there something else that comes to mind as kind of the greatest asset, what we bring to the world?
Well, technology definitely helps, but we also have to be careful as well. We have the people and the mindset to go along with that. If you look at some of the things that are going on right now, something that's hurting us is there's a new tanker that's being built and it's just come online. It's called the KC-46. It is about 10 years behind schedule right now. Some of it in the very beginning due to some corruption, other parts being with industry. It's just a tanker. It has some other things. It's not a crazy type of airplane, but it's just taking a long time. And because we've added on, you name it, new windshield wipers and new this and new that, the technology has actually caused us to slow down. In World War II, they're producing airplanes that, crazy amount, one airplane a week or something like that. Now it's taken us a long time, and everybody wants to have something added to this technology. So I would not say it's our greatest advantage. It's part of the puzzle, and it's a huge part of the puzzle, but we can't rely on it because if it doesn't work, and even things like technology and GPS, if you scramble some GPS stuff, is it still going to work? There's a lot of limb effects that we have to watch out for, and when you get really technological with our equipment.
Great, thank you. And John, we'll ask you the same question. From a military perspective, do you feel the United States is still looked upon as the leader of the free world?
Well, due to COVID, I haven't been able to leave the country, so I don't know, right? Obviously, this is a different time, that we live in, and a lot of crazy things going on around us. I do know, from the perspective of what I read and what I see, yes, I think is the answer to that question. I would say from my perspective, again, as the father of a soldier who just returned from Afghanistan and heard some of the stories of, what it's like over there, what their military is like. I would say that even our enemies respect us for sure in what we can do. And of course, with us leaving there, it leaves the nation open to things that may not happen if we were still there. I think if you look around the world and the leadership since World War II, 75 years, we have led the world in this way. I do agree with Colonel Smith. I think we need to be careful that we don't become complacent as a nation and think that we have strong weapons and that nothing can happen to us, because obviously something did happen to us on 9/11, and that slogan, never forget, really is important. That we shouldn't forget that we were attacked on our own soil here. But I would say the answer to the question is yes. I think we are respected.
Thank you so much. At this time, I will give Lieutenant Colonel Smith and John a few moments each to share anything that we've not covered that they feel is important to this conversation. So, John, we'll start with you on that.
Well, from my perspective, I think we did cover a wide range of things. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and the opportunity to be part of the Niagara Military Affairs Council and the things that we do for our military. And again, I would go back to say that that really, even in answer to your last question, it also, we think about machines and so on and technology, but it is the people behind those machines, the technology, the training that they do. It's important that we remember each of those in our, whether it be airmen or soldiers, et cetera, that they are the people who make it happen. The integrity that they bring to the fight that is required to be in the military is very important to the success of our nation. So thank you.
Thank you so much, John. And Ryan, we'll turn it to you.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. A lot of the questions focused on image, perspective, world views on us. And one of the things that I learned when I was at the headquarters is how we all know it, but how intertangled in the web of relationship building is with our allies, and specifically in the Middle East, because that's where I had a chance to work. In our United States law, we have something in 2008, QME, Quantitative Military Edge, by our law that we have to make sure that Israel has. Meaning, if we sell a purple bullet to another country, does Israel have 2 purple bullets, or how to defend that purple bullet? So when you're looking at the Middle East and how intertwined that is, we talk about Saudi has a lot of money. They're buying, like I said, I think about $126 billion right now out of the U.S. in fire trucks, you name it. UAE has a lot of money. Oman, we stole some F-16s when I was on the desk there. How does it all come into play? Well, we have to watch out from our own law to make sure that the QME is still being handled. But we also want to sell them our technology because it helps our industry, our people, and it helps us to be interoperable with them. But the part that really threw me for a loop was when the other nations then, well, we don't like your price, or we want more of these. And we said, oh, you can't have that weapon. It's too new. That's our technology. We'll give you a version B of it, or last year's model, which is still better than what you have. Then they said, well, you know what? We're looking at buying something from Russia or China. And when some of these countries in the Middle East start buying stuff from Russia and China, there's no governor, there's no limit on what they're going to get. And that kind of causes an arm race within itself now, because are they going to get what kind of weapon, what kind of, oh, this is a threat to Israel now, and then now Saudi's going to start building up more, and Iran's going to start building up more. So there's so much going on behind the scenes for us to be a leader of the free world just in the Middle East that I saw that blew my mind. And it's not just Air Force. We were given some amazing deals on airplanes to some of these countries, and I was shaking my head. Why would we sell that at that cheap of a price? But I didn't realize on the Navy side or the Marine side, there was something else that we were getting back from it. And it's that balance of relationship building, interoperability that we have.
It's a very interesting perspective. Thank you. At this time, we'll turn it to the chat box. And if anyone in the audience has any follow-up questions for John or Ryan, please go ahead. Paul, did you have something?
Liz, I'd be real curious to hear. This has been I missed the first few minutes. You guys know that, because I got all screwed up. But I've been fascinated. I'm wondering how the military looks to high schools, you know, to replenish the soldiers, and what can be done to keep the military life as an attractive service for young people. I just it made me think about it today. You guys obviously have made that decision. I have worked with teenagers all my life. I'm just curious as to what the recruiting status of recruiting, et cetera, would be. Is that okay?
So Ryan, you want to take that?
Yeah, I'll try. I don't work directly with recruiting.
Right.
But one thing that I know that they push a lot in the military is the educational benefits. So if you're looking at a high school student, they don't really know what they want to do. Instead of going to college and just going to college and not knowing, one other option is going into the military, doing a career field for 2 or 3 years, and then you can use the financial benefits that the military provides you for serving to possibly get a free education, and you might be a little bit older, more mature, and know which direction you want to go.
Thank you. John, anything to add?
Yeah, I would say most of that, from my perspective, goes to my personal experience with my son. I know that the military was active when he was going to school. Of course, there was a lot more action going on around the world at that time. But he had received a ROTC scholarship originally, and worked while he was in high school toward that. A lot of that came from us as parents, my wife and I, and encouraging him. But the other side of that is that at one time, Newport school system had a junior ROTC, Air Force, and the city of Niagara Falls school district is trying to start something like that again. I think that's very important that that type of thing happen so that young people can understand the benefits of joining the military or going for an ROTC scholarship, or as Colonel Smith did, go to one of the academies. That is something that I think should happen. The other side of that coin is retention of military, which is very important. Also, be able to keep people there, which I'm sure that Colonel Smith knows a lot more about than I do.
Yeah.
Sorry, my microphone wasn't on. We've got some comments in our chat box here, and I just want to share them with you. Dave Taylor says, John's being incredibly humble. The citizen response to the BRAC Commission visits were absolutely massive. One of the most successful organizing efforts we've seen in our community, all backed and supported by NIMAC. Thank you, John, and also Merrill, as he noted. And then Lynette O'Stewart says, many top brass military and retired military have spoken out against our current POTUS. Do you think they should remain silent? Are they viewed as breaking oath? Very good question.
I'll tack that last one with the former military. So that goes back to right now when you're in the military as an officer in the UCMJ in Article 88. When you're wearing the uniform, you can't do that. When they're retired, they're back to being a citizen. They don't have their military hat on. Now they might still use the retired rank, lieutenant, retired colonel, retired general, but they are not actively serving in the military. So I don't think the Hatch Act I know Article 88, I think it is, will not apply to them.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any further questions for our panelists at this point?
Thank you.
I'll give it one more minute in case anyone wants to type a last minute question.
Very enlightening. Thanks, guys.
So with that, I want to thank our panelists for joining us this evening and enlightening us and sharing their views and their experience with us. Lieutenant Colonel, I would certainly love to thank you for your service. John, we'd love to thank your son for his service as well, and thank both of you for all that you bring to our community. You are amazing leaders in our community. I've had the pleasure of working in partnership with both of you. So thank you for everything that you are doing. This concludes our evening's discussion. We hope that you're going to join us next week when we have our discussion Wednesday evening from 7 to 8 on the criminal justice system. And you can register for that at the same place that you registered for this session. You had the option to register for both, but if you didn't do that at the time, please, through the Levesque Institute of Civic Engagement, please go and register for that. That's going to be an enlightening conversation. And with that, I bid you all a good night, and thank you all for taking the time to share the evening with us.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you very much.